All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of the CX Chronicles podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Brady-Cesana. Super excited for today's show, guys. We have an awesome individual joining us, Simon Kriss. Simon, say hello to the CX Nation, my friend.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be part of the CX Chronicles.
So, guys, Simon, I've really enjoyed my last couple of chats with Simon. Simon is Australia's leading voice in AI in CX. He is a mentor on AI, all things AI, international keynote speaker, author, futurist. We've got a guy here that's got a lot of good things to talk about. So, Simon, I'm super pumped that you're joining the show and you're sharing your customer-focused business leadership journey with all of us, man.
Yeah, and look, thanks for overselling me right up front. Now I've got to live up to that. So.
And then the other thing too, for folks watching this on YouTube today, Simon has a super dope piece of artwork behind him. Simon, just I know our audio listeners want to see it, but tell our video watchers what is behind you again, really quick. I have to call it out.
Yeah, so this painting behind me is a piece of work by an Australian Indigenous artist. And as much as possible, we try to support their work. We have a few pieces of art around like this, and it's just a bit of fun as a background, bit of color.
It's awesome, man. It's super dope looking. Simon, look, before we jump into the pillars, I'd love for you to just start, man. Lay the ground like we do for all these episodes. Just spend a couple minutes, man, talking about before AI and before contact centers, before all the speaking across the world. What were some of the early stepping stones, man? Give our listeners an idea for sort of how you got into this space, how you got into the world of CX, how you got into the world of AI. Give us a sense for sort of what some of the early upbringings were.
Yeah, well, I mean, I left high school and decided I was going to be a CX superstar. No, I didn't. Like everybody else.
Wait, you too?
Yeah, that's right. Everybody else, I had a different path first. So I actually joined the military, and I did some years in the military. And when I got out of that, I went to work with a friend, and we were selling curtains and blinds. I used to tell people I'm a blind salesman. And I started making phone calls to people who were building homes and it was about the time that the word telemarketing was emerging in Australia. And I'm going back a lot of years now. And so I started kind of jumping on the telemarketing bandwagon. And joined our big telco here in Australia. They were called Telecom at the time. They're now Telstra. And I was on the phones as an agent, outbound calls, inbound, disturbing people at dinner time, inbound calls, and then a team leader, and then a manager, and then workforce manager, and literally made my way up through the contact centers. Worked for a number of them, and then struck out on my own, and I was doing some consulting work, and I moved to Hong Kong for 2 years. And 15 years later, I came back from Hong Kong.
Wow.
Having worked all around the world with contact centers on, just about every continent. And so, I've been in and around the CX space for 35 years. And kind of was tracking AI for about the last 10 years, but it never really delivered on the promise. There was always this promise of real-time agent tools and, magic this but they never kind of eventuated. And it was only as generative AI started to pop its head up about 5 years ago, that there actually looked like there might be some promise. And then, of course, once it democratized in late 2022, that just opened the floodgates for a whole lot of work, not just text generative AI engines, but just in general.
Yep. I love it. So, I mean, number one, thank you for sharing that. Number two, before we even get any further, so like 15 years in Hong Kong and working all over the world, that's awesome. What was 15 years like in Hong Kong? Even if you just give me like a short spiel of.
I absolutely loved living in Hong Kong and would move back there tomorrow. It's great because it's right in the middle of the world. It's 12 hours to LA, 12 hours to London, 9 hours down to Melbourne. It's literally in the middle of the world. And it's an incredibly vibrant city. So yeah, it was just a great place to base myself from. But I did wind up working, I built a call center in Poland, and I helped revamp a call center in Ireland, and then I was in the US, and then, it was just kind of all over the world. And of course, you're only 2 hours, 3 hours from Makati, Manila, the home of so many US call centers, and not too far from India. So you're kind of right in the middle of that big BPO space too. Well, what was then the big BPO space?
I love it, man. I find it fascinating. So many of the people that we have the fortune of having on this podcast, one thing that I hear time and time and time again, these customer focused business leaders have an opportunity or have the fortune to be able to work in multiple countries, multiple cities, different cultures, different places. There's no way that that doesn't have something to do directly with why they're able to eventually think about how to work with customers, how to serve customers, how to build teams, how to lead teams, how to motivate people in general, how to talk, how to storytell. I say it all the time, but I think one of the most incredible forms of education that any human can go through. It's traveling, number one. But if you have the fortune of being able to live in multiple different places, nothing beats that. It's
Yeah.
just a game changer. It's a game changer as a human. It's a game changer as a business person. So I love that, man. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Trevor,
I've,
I'd love
I've got to
to.
say, way back when I was just a team leader in a contact center, I remember my group manager of the time getting us all together, and she said, if you get hold of this call center thing, it'll take you anywhere you want to go. And I remember at the time thinking, well, that's a load of management BS. Some years later, in fact, about 8 years ago, I went out of my way to find her. She was in retirement living in Western Australia. And I went out of my way to find her, call her up, and thank her for that advice, because the industry literally has taken me around the world. So she was right and I was wrong.
Right, man. She was absolutely right. I love it. Simon, I'd love to dive into the first CX pillar of team, man. You and I had had some awesome conversations these last couple of weeks, but uh, couple things. Number one, I want you to answer however you see this fit, but there's a couple things going on because you've got loads and loads and loads of just general team building, team construction, team leadership experience. But you kept giving me our last couple of chats all these different ideas around some of the ways that teams across the world are leveraging AI. I'd love for you just to spend a couple minutes talking about from your own experiences some of the big things that you've really kind of honed in on after you've worked at multiple teams. And then I'd love you to kind of sprinkle some of the things that you're seeing with the AI and the CX space around, and then some of the things you put in your book, man, too. I didn't even call this out. Some of the things you put in your book, the AI Empower Customer Experience. I'd like you to spend a couple minutes just talking about the first pillar of team.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting thing in contact that so many of them say, oh, we have teams. And I kind of say, no, you have groups of people that are forced to work together. A true team, if you think of the Seahawks or, pick any team in any sporting code, Detroit Red Wings or whatever, they have a few things in common. One is that they have an identity of themselves. They have a group of people that are almost fanatical about supporting and will give themselves up for the betterment of the team. And I think that's where we need to get to in contact centers in particular. Your CX groups need to feel like they are a team. I love that banner that's behind your head. I could imagine each team in a contact center having a banner like that, having an identity, being a part of a team,
Right.
would be super, super strong.
Yep.
And the beauty of what I do, so much work around AI, is that AI can't build a team. It's a human connection. It's humans dealing with human, because humans are so weird, right? We're full of empathy and sympathy, but at the same time we're full of bias. And so, we're really interesting characters. And for me, what we're getting even more and more and more into now is less about IQ and more about EQ, that emotional quotient, and LQ, a learning quotient. So for me, the leaders and the teams that are really going to win as we move forward are emotionally connected to each other. They're emotionally aware, And, they've got a great desire to learn and change and do rather than, well, this is the way it's always been done, so this is the way we're going to do it. So it's going to be a very different focus. And look, I think the role, sprinkling in AI, I think the role of a contact center agent is going to dramatically change in the next couple of which I think will be accompanied by a fairly significant salary bump. But we will just be expecting a lot more of our staff. We might have slightly fewer of them, but we're going to be expecting a lot more of them.
Yeah, I think that's extremely well said, Simon. What you just made me think about there is just like, well, there's someone I worked for years ago in New York City. I remember her telling me that the future of the world had been traditionally been ran by left brain thinkers, but that we were entering a time, this was about 10 years ago, Simon. But she said, Adrian, what's funny, she said, we're entering a world which I truly believe, and she was an awesome, awesome leader, awesome lady, like just super smart. She's like, but I think that we're entering the world of the right brain thinker leading the world. And you just said humans are funny characters, and we are, but you said empathy and you said EQ. And when I think about right brain and I think about, a human's ability for emotions and focusing on all these abstract things and really kind of more creative and stories and people, humans are like that, right? Left brain, logical, focus on facts, all that stuff. You got to have that too. You got to understand sort of what's black, what's white. You got to know how to do your math or else you're not going to get very far. But when she said that, I always would think back on this sometimes as I kind of got deeper into my CX leadership journey. And it's
Mhm.
funny because, like, man, I've worked with all sorts of different types of leaders. I've worked with some incredible left brain thinkers that were just super duper duper high EQ, smart, just smart, right?
Yeah.
But you had 100 customers on the phone with that person, or you had 100 customers in person with that person, maybe not the same as an individual who literally was able to have that empathy, do the connectivity, be creative, storytelling, listening, man. You can't learn anything if you're not listening, right? A lot of humans don't get that part. But I love that. I love that thought. One last piece. When everybody gets all scared and worried and hot and bothered about AI and machine learning and Terminator finally entering, current day, I love that you and so many other forward-thinking AI-focused thought leaders, y'all say the same thing, which is, look, it's here to be able to help humans do things that number one, computers can just simply do way faster, way cleaner, way clearer. But number two, it's there to be able to allow humans to be able to make the decisions that they still know other humans are going to have to be able to agree with or to have some type of connectivity with. So I just think it's funny. Everybody keeps kind of talking about AI in such a negative bit as it relates to team and what we're talking about right now here in this first pillar. Dude, there's so many different things that it can do to help with your employee experience and with actually better serving your
Absolutely.
team, better understanding your team, better
So,
how to motivate your team. So I love
and
some of
look,
the gears right there, Simon.
think about it this way, right? In the movie Iron Man, which, whether you like Marvel movies or not, and I hope that's the right franchise, you've probably seen bits, if not all, of the Iron Man movie. Tony Stark, the character, is still a human, and he is the superhero. It's just what allows him to be a superhero is Jarvis, this incredible AI system that sits around him, does all the evaluations, does all the calculations, does all the grunt work, and then presents him with options and says, here you go, you could do this or this or this. Now, often, and it's, a theme of the movie, is he goes rogue and says, no, I don't want to do any of those. I want to do this illogical thing over here.
Yeah.
And AI says, that's not a smart thing to do. And he says, I don't care. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
That's very much how I see AI around people's lives. Is it's there, it's not designed to take over your job. It's not designed to do what you do because we're not in the land of artificial general intelligence yet. We're still in the land of artificial narrow intelligence. So it's quite normal and quite okay for a human to go, you know what? No, I don't like that output. I want it to be like this, and you just mentioned empathy before. Some of the AI systems today can feign empathy really well. You can teach it that if somebody says, oh, my kid got a broken leg, it can go, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Now, it doesn't understand that a broken leg causes pain, nor does it understand that a parent feels pain when their child is injured. What it understands is broken leg equals bad, say something nice.
Yeah.
So it doesn't understand empathy, it just feigns it.
Yep.
And that's why the human element is still going to have to be there for a very long time. Even as we move into general intelligence, it is
Yep.
still going to have to be there because we, we can cry and laugh at the same thing at the same time. You can be at a funeral and everybody's crying and somebody retells the story and everybody starts laughing even though it's a sad
Yep.
event. That's
Yep.
highly illogical for a
Yep.
computer,
Yep.
but completely normal for a human, just because of how we are and how we've been brought up and the things we've been conditioned with. And a 5-year-old has probably had 20 times the input of any large language model, let alone by the time you get to 30, 40.
Yep.
The inputs that your neural network in your head is dealing with is a million times bigger than what a large language model does. So there is definitively a point for humans to still be involved.
Yep, I think that is spot on, and I also just think your comment about the funeral. It's so true. There's still so many things that a human would be able to detect, understand, comprehend, and then be able to respond to in a way where AI, sure, it might understand some of the hints. It might be able to get relatively close from just a response based perspective, but like it's still going to your point, like it's going to take a long time if humans continue to manage. Now, one question though, open source, right? And this open source idea, and then this idea that theoretically, as all of us continue to um, essentially add to some of the different language models or add to some of the different ways that some of these models are actually speaking, that's a different thing, right? That's where the intelligence or the robustness of the comprehension of some of these different AI solutions, that's where the velocity is going to be extreme. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the velocity is going to spin up. But once again, you've got to understand it sees examples and tries to copy those, right? And tries to predict. Every AI model everywhere in the world is about predicting the next best whatever.
Yep.
So even your chat GPTs, because everyone loves to use that as the example, all it's doing is guessing what is the next most appropriate word, and then the next most appropriate word, and then the next, and then the next, and then it's predictive models. So when it's spinning up velocity and appears to be getting smarter and smarter, what it's doing is it's just seeing more and more examples of things and copying those examples.
Yep.
But imagine an AI trying to understand the concept of political correctness based upon scenario. So I'm together with 3 of my buddies. We're out fishing. The language is probably more colorful than I would normally use. We're 4 beers in each.
Yep.
What comes out as politically correct between guys picking on each other is one thing. If I then move into sitting in a boardroom meeting, what is politically correct there?
Mhm.
So it's situational,
Yep.
and humans learn how to adapt to situational.
Yep.
AI still struggles with that. All it knows is I've seen this example, this example, this example, so that's what I will mimic.
Yep. Okay. Super well said. And then again, it's just another reason to remind folks that like we are still very much in a position of control, and then we're very much in a position where we still need to be able to simply leverage it as a tool that we need to keep an eye on, and we need to continue to monitor, change, and make iterations on all of that. Simon,
Absolutely.
I'd love to kind of move into the second CX pillar of tools. Number one, you from our last couple conversations, man, you've worked with all of some of the biggest contact center tools on planet Earth. You have seen all sorts of different types of technology. You've worked at all these different businesses. I'd love to kind of hear you talk about tools for a couple minutes, and again, it can be high level ideas around sort of what you've seen some of the best companies or what you've seen some of your best companies sort of how they've leveraged specifically the tools that they need for their business and the tools that they need for the customers. I'd really like to know some ideas or hear you kind of speak a little bit about what are some of the ways you've seen some incredible organizations help their employees with tool utilization. And then again, I'd love to, if there's ideas around how our listeners can think about how AI can help them with that, please, I'm all ears.
Yeah, it's interesting. People are, I have to peel back a little and talk. AI adoption is a little bit like teenage love. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody thinks everybody else is doing it. Actually, very few people are doing it, and those that are probably doing it wrong.
Yep.
And it's very much that same way. So the adoption of AI tools is way slower than what people think it is. But there are some great examples of how people are picking up things small chunks at a time. So if you're going to step into AI, don't think about trying to launch the Starship Enterprise. Just think about getting a seat on the next Bezos rocket that's going up to have a look at the Earth. It's that kind of thing, right? Small chunks. So things like a great use case that I saw a center using recently is for the chat agents. They just type in the words "no refund." Generative AI takes that and turns it into, "Dear sir, on this occasion, due to a lapse in your policy and blah, 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 and the fact that the car is 28 years old, unfortunately, we cannot process a refund at this point." Something lovely and flowery. But the agent's not having to write all of that. They're being used for higher level things such as decision making and things like that. They're still human in the loop. Seen a similar one to your point around EX of, what annoys contact center workers, at their core, what annoys them? Yes, pay, permanency, parking, the three big P's, sure, but not being able to control their roster. Well, there's an AI powered tool that can help with that now. Having to do donkey work that they just hate, like writing a post-call summary and things like that. Well, there's AI for that. But we've moved beyond that too. There are solutions now, for instance, that listen to the calls, and their whole job is to look for calls that have a high emotive load. So think about a government worker that is in the pensions department, and they get a call from somebody who says, "If I don't get my pension payment tonight, I'm going to step out into the traffic," or "My husband's going to come home and beat me," or whatever that, terrible situation might be. They're highly emotive loaded calls. So we can now use AI to track that, and at the end of the call, hold up before the next call just comes through and say to the agent, that was a pretty heavy call. Are you okay? Do you need a break? Do you want to talk about it? Or flag to the team leader, "Hey, this person's having a really high emotive load call. You need to go over and tap them on the shoulder." It's those well-being care type applications of AI that I'm most excited about. I love things that really support humans and help humans do their jobs better, and those things that pick up people on the fringe that might otherwise not be serviced by mainstream tools and enable them to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I've constantly been blown away by how many of the companies we've had the honor of working with here at CXC that they might have loads and loads and loads and loads of call data, right? But then when you start to dig into some of the VOC reporting, you start to try to understand what's the customer level, what's the customer, hey, what are we doing? What do we need to do more of, less of? Where do they think positive about our product, negative? And my point is, like, some of these companies, they might have hundreds of either inside sales or calling agents a day, and no one's ever actually done any type of deep dive on sentiment analysis, on keyword smithing and understanding top 10s, top 20s, positive, negative, so positive sentiment, negative sentiment. All of those things, once you start to understand them, they can be unpacked for both the CX side of, like, okay, how do we make our product better, our service better? You are spot on, Simon. On the EX side too, you can do the same damn thing. You start to extrapolate that
Yeah.
across different teams, different departments, different calling agents. You can begin to literally see who's had a really great month and lots of what seems like a lot of positive activities this month versus sometimes like every one of us that's listening to the show has had the teammate that just gets the worst customer calls, or they just get like, it's almost like their luck is just absolutely, even if it's round robin or whatever, however you guys are doing some of your distribution on the call side, but like every one of us has that teammate that just pulls every unlucky rabbit out of the hat, right? So I think you're spot on. There's so
And
much.
is that, it comes down to, is it a certain type of call that is frustrating the agents? And maybe that's because the process to handle that call is an absolute dog of a process.
Yep.
Or is it this one particular agent just seems to get nasty calls and actually it's not the callers, it's the agent? Is it the agent on the day? Do you have agents that are fantastic on Monday and
Yep.
absolutely terrible come Thursday or Friday?
Yeah, right. You
All
know
of
who
these things, and that,
isn't that all of us or no?
yeah, maybe. I can neither confirm nor deny. All of those types of things are being able to be done now. Whereas before we struggled with enough compute power and enough tech to be able to do this. So think about quality management in the contact center. What are you listening to? 0.5% of calls, maybe 1% of calls. A really
Yeah.
common thing I hear
Yep.
is 4 calls per agent per month. Well,
Yeah.
that's fantastic, except they're taking 5,000.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so as you get into, and even speech analytics, as good as it can, bad speech analytics is just word spotting, basically. It's
Yep.
just looking for certain words.
Yep.
Good speech analytics says, well, we heard this word within 5 or 6 words of this word, or we heard these 2 phrases, and so we can derive something. Generative AI takes the entire telephone conversation and it can analyze kind of what's going on in that entire string. So not just little sentences or little phrases, but the entire conversation. Because there's a big difference between someone saying, I want to cancel my account now,
Yep.
and somebody saying, I want to cancel my account now.
Yep.
They're two very different phrases. And when you turn them to text, it's hard to tell them apart.
Yep.
But generative AI uses the context of the entire call to derive that, okay, early on in the call, you were calling me an SOB and, you hated me and blah, blah, blah. And this part of the call, you said you wanted to cancel the account now. We can kind of guess how you said that. So,
Yep.
and it can do that because of compute power. You can now do that across 100% of your calls. So you can derive sentiment, you can derive to your thing, not only keywords, but key themes. What are people calling up about? If you suddenly get a surge of calls over 2 hours, wouldn't it be great to just be able to type into your AI engine, what's going on that's driving this increased call volume?
Yep.
And let it come back and tell you in a couple of seconds what's going on.
Yep.
There's some real power in this stuff.
I love it. Simon, what have you seen across our industry, but also just from some of the different teams that you worked with, some of the different clients that you're working with today? When you talk about process, right, and you talk about some of the playbooks or the standard operating procedures, or even a lot of companies now, part of how you're going to train your AI, it's really going to be contingent upon how your knowledge base or how your FAQs or how your internal facts are actually, how have they been curated, who wrote them, when were they written, are they old, are they new, are they fresh, are they stale? But I'd love to kind of hear you kind of talk about how process fits into some of this, or some of the things that you're seeing clients or you're seeing different companies doing to stay ahead on the process and to make sure that they're wrangling process and to make sure that they're kind of tying it all together to appease the other pillars.
So what I'm seeing so far is that they're not. What people are trying to do is strap AI onto an existing process. And, it's like strapping a rocket engine to a car with 3 wheels and hoping that it holds together. It's just not going to, right? You can't get a 1970s Pinto and put a jet engine on it. And so what we're starting to see is that people are using the analytical side of AI to try and derive where the problems are in their process and then go and start fixing them. The thing that's holding them back, though, and you hit on it perfectly, is the data, right? So yes, they may have some structured data in a structured database, and that might be a knowledge management system, that could be your call tracking system. It could be your call recordings, your CRM. All of those have structured databases to them. And aligning those is not overtly difficult for AI. What becomes a problem is when you get to your unstructured data. This is the stuff that's sitting in PDF documents, in Confluence, in SharePoint, in Teams messages. Very, very unstructured data. How do you bring that forward and get it in so that AI can use it? And then the last piece of that is tech debt. And we have a lot of organizations that are carrying a lot of tech debt. You know, I had someone just recently say to me, we've got 3 Lotus Notes databases that we'd love to put AI on. And I went, good luck. Like, that's just impossible to do. And they've never paid that tech debt of moving those databases, migrating them to something that a technology like AI could use. So there's a few things kind of getting in the way of people being able to really change their process. But as they do, we see that the changes in process are not small. The changes in process are massive. So, you know, I always encourage people to not think about an externally facing AI application first. Don't do your external chatbot first. Please, for the love of God, don't do that. Because when you make a mistake, not if, when you make a mistake with implementing AI, if it's internal, it's controllable.
Yep.
If it's external, your reputation's already done. And we've seen examples of that.
Yep.
So pick a simple internal use case and go with that first. You know, one of the ones I love is build a little internal chatbot that takes all of your HR policies and procedures, put them into a conversational bot that people can just ask questions like a human of, hey, how do I do this? How do I apply for that? What's the policy around this? And have something just respond to them. It's quick, it's easy. Often that information is somewhat structured.
Yep.
And so it's a good place to start. And it's not a moving set of data, as in, you know, unless you start folding in all of people's annual leave entitlements and blah, 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 blah,
Yep.
which you can do as a second step. But yeah, I'd say step small and look for wins in process that way.
I love it. I love it. Simon, fourth pillar, feedback. Just spend a few minutes talking about some of the simple ways that you are seeing some of the leading companies in the world leverage AI for feedback. And then I'd love for you to kind of just share a few bits of wisdom or advice around some of the things for our listeners. A lot of founders, a lot of CXCS, contact center leadership. A little bit of advice from all the different companies you worked with and from all these different places that you've traveled all over the world speaking on this topic, meeting these different customer focused business leaders. Love for you just to kind of wrap us up and spend a few minutes kind of talking about feedback.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a couple of bits of feedback. One is obviously customer feedback, right? That's the big elephant in the room. And my hit prediction, I'm going to look into my crystal ball here and make a prediction, is that post-interaction surveys are dead. They are on the way out. For the most part, only a small percentage of people complete them.
Yep.
Usually when they complete them, they're either so pro the outcome, like they got exactly the outcome they wanted and more, or they are completely anti the outcome, right? You tend to get a lot of the two extremes. And when you discount those, how much intelligence are you really getting?
Yeah.
To even then put up a question that says, tell us in your own words how it went. Well, that's okay. You can analyze that. But why are we imposing that upon the customer? That's what I call having CX done to you, not CX for you, right?
Yeah.
We're forcing the customer to do these. Why don't we use the tools at our discretion, you know, the tools that are available to have AI derive all of that? Let it train it to listen to calls, talk about sentiment change, because I don't subscribe to the theory that each call has a sentiment. I think sentiment changes over the call. Ideally, from red to green. Like the person starts off, oh, you guys, I hate you. You've done a terrible thing, and ends up with, wow, thank you. That was awesome. That's kind
Yeah.
of the epitome of customer
Yeah.
experience. But letting AI do that and then letting AI stitch together all of the various parts of the CX journey. Often as call center people, we get caught up in CX is the phone call. And CX isn't the phone call. CX is the product, how the person purchased it, which might be in store or online. This call that we're talking about is just a part of the service process. Then there was, how did it get delivered? Was the driver well dressed or was he stinky? Did he park the truck on the lawn? All of these things kind of fit into CX, and starting to stitch together data from right across your organization to truly get a picture of CX is
Yep.
where I think feedback is going.
Yeah.
So I think feedback is going to become more a function of what we do as an organization rather than a burden that we place upon the customer.
Yep. I love that, man. I love those ideas. I think you're spot on. I can't tell you how many times, and when I'll just call it up because everybody already knows they go through the same damn thing. It's airline companies, it's telecom cable companies here in America, man. These knuckleheads, man. Like, first of all, no, I didn't enjoy your terrible Delta flight because you already know that we were 2 hours late. You already know that we sat on the tarmac for an hour. What do you mean you're asking me to answer 27 questions about Delta? Get out of here. Like, no, forget that. Like, that actually just made me hate you more, Delta. Frankly, that's number one. The other
Yeah,
thing too is table, like with telecom, they're like same type of thing. They can see all of our user data. They can literally see everything. They can see our internet usage. They can see what we're watching. They can see what we're consuming the most of, the least of, and then they'll send these, like, again, just pages and pages and pages of. It's almost disrespectful, and it's crazy
that's right.
that some of the guys and the gals that are running CX at those companies, who probably, Simon, similar to you, similar to me, they probably have decades of experience, aren't changing that. It's crazy to me. That's number one. The second thing is just like, I think that you're spot on with the journey. It's funny when we do our journey maps at CXC with our clients. One of the things that we really push our clients to understand is, where are you guys already capturing, or where do you already have historical feedback based data, right? So as you're going through touch points and as you're going through all of the intricacies of the different areas of pre-selling, all the way through the conversion, through post sale, regardless of how you're building your mass. And it's crazy how often you literally just get a post sale one. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. We literally already know that we need to go through 100 prospects to maybe get 3 to 5 customers to convert. Why aren't we tracking how we theoretically lost the other 97 to 95 prospects? Because then how do we ever help our marketing and our sales team? So, like, I think you're spot on. We're just getting more thoughtful, a little bit more sophisticated with being able to leverage or have the goal to be able to go and ask feedback at different points that you traditionally don't. And then the last thing too is the employee side, man. I just think, and I know you broke this up, but like, you're right. Like, customer feedback is one part of it, but then in the employee experience side, so many companies undervalue what the guys and gals that they literally pay to show up every damn day, speak to those customers every damn day. They don't take any of that EX based feedback and try to correlate it back into the CX side. And it's just mind blowing to me. And I know it might just be the CX
Yeah.
nerd, but some of these companies that it's like, how could you not leverage that and just try to tie it together and then find your priorities from there? So just some
Yeah,
thought.
and there's some stuff you see. How long did someone take in the sales process online, and compare that to propensity to call? If you really want to, and I'm not an advocate of call deflection. I think that's just a stupid, short-sighted CFO response. But if you're really trying to make it so that people don't have to call, which is, the best type of service,
Totally.
is there a link between the time taken to purchase and whether or not they call? So is it that people aren't quite understanding what they got? Is there a direct correlation between how long it takes to get delivered and propensity to call? Is there a correlation? You're looking for all of these correlations that can then lead to causation potentially. But and going back to your other point about some of the crazy stuff, I see government departments like the tax department asking for an NPS score.
Yeah, right.
Are you likely to recommend us to some? Who's going to recommend a tax department?
Yeah,
And if they are, what? How many competitors are there for the
yes.
the national tax department? So I
Zero,
just see
delete,
some of these.
unsubscribe.
Yeah, I just see some of these things that you just look at and they're absolutely stupid. A police service. Did you enjoy your call today? Well, nobody calls the police when they're having a good day. It's like a windscreen company,
Yeah,
right? You don't
right.
call them, hey, I'm having a great day. I might call up the windscreen company. No,
Yeah,
you
right.
call them because some idiot threw a rock at your car and broke
Yeah,
the windscreen, right?
yeah, yeah.
So, I think we've got to take all of this stuff into consideration. I really do.
I love it. Simon, look, number one, this has been absolutely fantastic. Before I let you go, my friend, where can people find out more about some of the incredible work you're doing? Where can people find your book? Where can people get in touch with Simon Kriss to learn more about some of this awesome stuff that you're doing and some of this stuff that we're gonna all have to understand how to leverage and how to think about and how to use in the future?
Yeah, look, the book is available on Amazon. It's called the AI Empowered Customer Experience. For those that are watching, that's what the cover looks
Nice.
like.
There it is.
It's an AI picture on the cover, of course. And I'm working on version 2 right now because I wrote that book 6 months ago, 7 months ago. And 7 months is a very long time in AI, so I need to update the book. But the best way for people to get hold of me is via LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn. I post a lot of stuff there. And I'm always happy to entertain questions. People can just DM me with a question, mostly because nobody kind of has a degree from a university in CX and call center management, or very few. Most of us have learned by a little bit like snow skiing. You
Yeah.
learn the most when you fall over.
Yes.
It's
Yep.
the same type of thing. So I'm a big advocate of sharing and, helping each other along and answering questions. So if I can do that for people, I'm more than happy to.
I love it. Well, Simon, it's been our absolute pleasure having you on the CX Chronicles podcast. Best of luck to you in the future, my friend, and I'll look forward to continuing our conversations in the future.
Thank you, sir. I'd love to keep chatting.